I want to just say a couple of things. One, on the last panel, I know there's a lot of focus on China. I would say that's okay, but let's not overlook what we saw in the first panel and what some of us see all the time, which is there are a lot of self-inflicted wounds coming right from the U.S., whether it's the regulatory bodies here in the past, or whether it's the court decisions, or whether, frankly, and maybe this is going too far, there's a kind of fifth column, if anybody remembers that term, of companies who are successful but are trying to do what they can using foreign regulators as well as U.S. regulators to advance their views of how one should divide the spoils of implementation versus innovation. And I, like Stephen Haber, like to hear myself talk, and I wish I had a lot more time to talk about all this, because there were so many things that were said, certainly during that first panel, that I would love to comment on. One of the things that, as I mentioned to David Kapos afterwards, I really despair about the likelihood of change coming fast enough. I've been on this pulpit for 10 years. I've said things, for example, like, and this is years ago, that the standard essential patent attacks is just the tip of the spear because it's all going to come after patents, and that has happened. I can go back and reread my speeches about so many things that were discussed today, and while I think it's very much worth our while to keep trying, I do despair about the possibility of change coming quickly enough, frankly. That said, I'm going to now quickly introduce our next speaker. You heard this morning about the strong amendment, and now we're going to talk about the Stronger Patents Act. The good news is that Congress is beginning to take notice. Certainly several congressmen and others are taking notice about the things that we're all concerned about. And our keynote speaker here this morning is taking a leadership role in making sure that innovation and a strong patent system continues to survive and maintains that constitutional promise. As the leader chief sponsor of the Stronger Patents Act, Congressman Steve Stivers of Ohio, by the way, we have Ohio represented well today with Judge O'Malley and the Congressman. He's been working to restore the U.S. patent system as the international gold standard that we all talked about had existed and others had emulated. It's bipartisan legislation. It's co-sponsored by Bill Foster of Illinois and Senators Chris Coons of Delaware and Tom Cotton of Arkansas. And it aims to balance the stakes and ensure the U.S. patent system is once again strong, efficient, and fair for inventors. Since his election in 2011, Congressman Stivers has worked tirelessly for the people of his district, 15th District in Ohio, to promote job creation and spur economic growth. A career soldier, Representative Stivers has served 30 years in the Ohio Army National Guard and actually achieved the rank of Brigadier General, and served in the United States overseas during Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he received the Bronze Star. Representative Stivers is a leader in Congress on a wide range of issues. He has helped pass multiple bills supporting veterans and their families. He has led this, and he has been the lead sponsor of legislation combating the opiate epidemic, and he has made innovation and job creation a top priority. As Congressman Stivers' leadership on the Stronger Patents Act shows, he understands the critical role intellectual property plays in our innovation economy, and he recognizes the need to ensure the U.S. patent system drives innovation and supports inventors. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce a champion for innovation and invention. Please help me welcome the Honorable Steve Stivers.
Thanks, Don. It's great to be with everybody today. I really appreciate what you're doing to promote American innovation that's so important. You know, we may not have the lowest wage rate in the world, we may not have the least regulation in the world, but America has some of the best ideas. And if our intellectual property laws work, then some of those best ideas are going to be driving our economy. And that's why I know you're talking about the patent system today, and I wanted to come and talk about the bill that Bill Foster and I introduced a few weeks ago, the Stronger Patents Act. We pay interns to come up with these acronyms. The Stronger Patent Act stands for supporting technology and research for our nation's growth and economic resilience. So somebody, spent a lot of time thinking about that. But unfortunately, our patent system which was number one in the world for decades, has slid back over the last few years. And of course, last year, the Chamber of Commerce ranked it number 10 in the world, tied with Hungary. Now we actually, just a few weeks ago, it was, the new ratings came out and we slid to number 12. So clearly things are going the wrong direction. And I know that we've got to turn it around. A weakened patent system means less investor confidence in tech startups, in bio and pharmaceutical companies, and in innovation centers around the country at our nation's universities. So we've got to do something. Historically, if a company gets a patent, they have a 50% better chance of getting venture capital. So we know that intellectual property has been meaningful, and we need to make it meaningful again. How did we get here? Well, in 2011, Congress passed the America Invents Act, which I actually supported. It created the Patent Trial Appeal Board, the PTAB, that was supposed to be a relief valve for patent disputes that had long been backlogged. It was a promise of a faster, fairer, and cheaper way to challenge patents, all with the intent to eliminate bad patents that fuel frivolous litigation. Unfortunately, the process has been severely stacked against patent owners, and there have been some subsequent court decisions that have further weakened the promise of the property right of intellectual property. Under the American Invents Act, lawyers, market speculators, and companies with the deepest pockets have been able to game the system, especially against small innovators, so that the status quo is only survivable for some of the largest incumbents, not garage inventors or academic inventors. Unfortunately, the PTAB employs a lower standard of construction of their claims against patents than our court system does, and that sets up two different results that only lead to more appeals, increased costs, and longer time period for disputes being settled. Rather than having confidence in a single administrative decision, we've seen most challenges at the PTAB also be challenged separately at a federal court. And the PTAB also has no limit in the number of times somebody can challenge a patent. So what happens is you sometimes get serial challenges, and that can really increase the time and actually increase the cost of these challenges. Worse yet, the PTAB's actually overruled the federal court and federal court decisions on dozens of occasions, something that the United States Supreme Court is currently looking at in this session. Clearly, the status quo is in need of change, and 7 years into the American Invents Act, it's time to reevaluate, reassess, and figure out where we move from here. And that's why we came up with the Stronger Patents Act. I believe if we make our patent system stronger, it means more and higher paying jobs. Patent-intensive industries like technology and startups have higher wages. They have a 74% wage premium over the average wage. So clearly, there is real promise, and there's something that we need to do. This bill goes about supporting patents by really doing three things. Number one, returning patents as property rights. Number two, clarifying and harmonizing the rules of the PTAB. And three, protecting startups from being out-resourced. How do we return patent rights? Well, we bring back injunctive relief that, I still believe, I'm not an attorney, but I still believe there is injunctive relief. But, there's a lot of attorneys that believe right now after a Supreme Court a court decision that there is no real ability to get injunctive relief for patent holders. So we bring it back legislatively. What has happened lately is that the status quo allows anybody that might be infringing on a patent, if they're caught and found guilty of infringement, to pay damages, and those damages equal what the licensing fees would have been from the start. That's led to the term efficient infringement, which a lot of people, would define as saying, well, it's easier to just go ahead and infringe because the worst thing that happens to us if we get caught is we get we pay what we would have paid anyway. So we can save money by infringing, and maybe we won't get caught, or maybe, we can defend ourselves and not have to pay. And what the heck, let's not pay any licensing fees. Let's just go out and infringe. And frankly, the idea of efficient infringement has finally caught the sort of ear of some policymakers. Even the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, who's not necessarily been on the side I'm on patents, is going to have a hearing on the bigger issue of patents, including the stronger bill, which will come up at it, because of things like the idea of efficient infringement. In lots of other areas of the law, again, I'm not an attorney, if you do something and you get caught, you might have double or treble damages, 2 or 3 times the damages of what it would have cost you originally, which gives people a disincentive to go out and do bad things, because if they get caught, they pay 2 or 3 times more. And I'm not saying this bill does not do that. I'm not suggesting we necessarily move that direction, but we've got to do something to encourage people to do the right thing up front. And what we do is create injunctive relief. And I believe that that will give the patent owners, especially the smaller patent owners, an ability to survive and not just be outspent and have their property taken from them. The bill also clarifies the PTAB rules. Our bill ensures that the standards used at the Patent Trademark Office are the same as those used in the district courts. And finally, as a way of trying to prevent startups from being out-resourced, we try to make sure that there is a level playing field. Main Street has just as much a right to be called an inventor as folks in Silicon Valley. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, where we have The Ohio State University. We have just down the road, University of Cincinnati, Ohio University. We have Rev 1 Ventures in Columbus. We have the Cleveland Clinic just up the road. All of them depend on a strong patent system. And another small company in my district told me, and I won't even say their name because I don't want them to get sued, that if somebody challenged their patents, they would likely go bankrupt trying to protect their patents in the current system, because they just don't have the deep pockets that a lot of big businesses do, and the system is so complicated and so expensive and so lengthy. So we have to ensure that everybody has the same opportunity to compete in an open market, and so we're protecting the small patent and startup holders by eliminating harassing and duplicitous claims on patent owners. And let's be clear, the supporters of the Stronger Patent Act want to eliminate bad patents. Nobody is here to defend so-called patent trolls, but sometimes in some of the bills that have come out, universities would have been defined as patent trolls. Anybody who invents something in their garage and isn't currently practicing in that area, well, this is their invention, they just invented it, how can they be practicing in that area? They would be defined as patent trolls. But some of the practices that we make clear, I think, can get rid of some of the harassment that's going on out there, and we're excited to be doing that. We want to end frivolous lawsuits. We want to make sure that we do that by, and how we choose to do that is by empowering the Federal Trade Commission to go after those sort of litigious practices that extort innovators through settlement demands and other things. In conclusion, we're trying to do our part to make sure that small business continues to have an opportunity, just like big business does in our innovative space. As a nation, again, we may not have the lowest wage rates or the lowest number of regulations, but I think we have some of the best ideas, and protecting those is essential to the future of our economy. I can take a few questions, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
My name is Gene Quinn. I'm from IP Watchdog. Gene Quinn from IP
Gene.
Watchdog. It's great to hear that there's going to be a hearing that in part addresses the issue of efficient infringement. But in town, I've come to notice that so much of what happens at the hearings depends upon the witnesses that are at the hearings. And the chairman has not always had hearings that are really fair and balanced. And not just on the House side, but on the Senate side, there was just a hearing dealing with CBM where the person who was ostensibly against it was against it because he thought it should be expanded. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you can do to get somebody on that panel for a hearing that might actually be able to give the point of view that efficient infringement is bad.
So, the chairman will ultimately, and the committee will decide who the witnesses are, but they have asked, they've said that they'll work with us as they go through this process, and we're hopeful to get a hearing this spring, next couple months. And it hasn't been announced yet, and obviously there haven't been any witnesses picked yet, but we're going to be working with them to try, and Bill Foster and I both, again, this is a bipartisan effort, and Bill will be working with the Judiciary Democrats, I'll be working with the Judiciary Republicans, and we'll be coordinating with each other as we go through this to try to make sure that we have good witnesses that can talk about the issues that we want to talk about. So I'm hopeful that we'll have maybe even more than one witness that is able to talk about the kind of issues we want to talk about. One of those clearly is efficient infringement. Thanks for the question, Gene. Anybody else? Easy audience. Yes, Don.
How much support do you think you're going to get? Is this going to be easy, hard, or?
I think anytime you're trying to make a change, and this is not only a change, but it's a change in direction from the 2011 American Invents Act. And to be fair to Bob Goodlatte, who's the chairman of Judiciary, he was not the chairman when we enacted the American Invents Act. It was Lamar Smith. So, and I was in Congress. I was a brand new freshman back then. But we are kind of we're trying to go back the other direction because I would argue the pendulum sometimes swings too far. That's what we did with American Invents Act, is we swung this pendulum toward folks that have deep pockets and resources and away from the sort of small guy. And I don't think that's fair. And, representing Ohio, one of our greatest inventors who invented the light bulb, he failed a bunch of times, and he was a garage inventor in Milan, Ohio, Thomas Edison. Now, he spawned General Electric and, major industry in this country. But when he invented the light bulb, he was a garage inventor. And under stronger patent, or under the American Invents Act today, he could be put out of business by, the big candle companies. Yes. You didn't think you'd hear about Big Candle, did you?
Hi, Dave Kapos, Congressman Stivers. First of all, thank you very much for your leadership on introducing the Stronger Act on the House side. That is tremendous, and we're looking forward to the hearing. My question goes to something going on at the Cleveland Clinic. You mentioned them, great Ohio institution leading the world in healthcare solutions right up the road from you. The Cleveland Clinic had a breakthrough a number of years ago on a medical diagnostic. It's a simple blood test that can detect the oncoming event of cardiovascular failure. So this is an enzyme that's in the blood that the Cleveland Clinic figured out how to detect it and tell us all if we're going to have a heart attack. That's a really important piece of information. They went on to get 3 patents. They founded a company, the Cleveland Clinic did, right there in Ohio. The company started putting out this medical diagnostic, and then all 3 patents were found to be invalid based on failing to claim patent-eligible subject matter under a series of tragic decisions that our Supreme Court has put in play in recent years. The Cleveland Clinic had to walk away from that company, sell it for pennies on the dollar. And my understanding from folks at the clinic is there's since been a declaration within the clinic they're not interested in doing medical diagnostic research anymore because investors aren't interested in creating companies and putting those cures in the marketplace. So people are going to get to die because our Supreme Court has said American innovation in diagnostics is no longer patentable. Could you comment on thinking in Congress, your awareness of this issue, what we need to do in order to put America back on the right track?
Well, I'm not familiar with this specific case, but that is a tragic outcome for 300 million Americans that on any given day want to know more about their health, not less. Just look at how many people, I don't know, raise your hand if you've done 23andMe or one of the DNA tests, about 10% of the room. People want to know more about their health, not less, and diagnostics are a great, opportunity. So, there's always trouble with the Supreme Court can only determine what's in the law, and it's our job to put stuff in the law that's right. That's why I think the Stronger Patents Act will help bring back property rights that will then help them have to create new case law. The case law is only as good as the law because it starts with law. So that's where we've got to do our job to update the laws based on where the world is today and where technology is today. But that's a tragic outcome based on probably, antiquated laws and, a tragic decision at the Supreme Court. So, but I believe bills like the Stronger Patents can move us the right direction, and we've got to work harder to make it happen. I feel confident that we're going to start to get some movement. We're starting to get co-sponsors to finish answering Don's question. But it's, when you're going against the grain, it's going to take a couple, 3 years to get this bill done. I'd love to tell you it's coming sooner. In your introduction of me, you feared that it may not be coming soon. And it's not coming between now and November, I don't think. It's not like the chairman has promised us a vote. He promised us a hearing. And, right now I'm happy with small victories, but at some point, the whole point is to get this enacted into law, not just to have hearings on it. Because if we don't change the laws, we won't change the kind of outcomes you just described. I'll do one more and then I gotta go. Yes.
Andrea Stargard with Primerio. I litigated a case years ago involving a patent troll law firm, actually, that was essentially a mill for these lawsuits and demand letters that you mentioned, rightly so. You also mentioned that you are not going to push for treble damages at this point, and that it's focused on your bill. The act is focused on injunctions. What about lawyers' fees or fee-shifting provisions? Have the drafters discussed that as an additional tool or arrow in your quiver?
So as I said, I'm not an attorney. I sponsored tort reform in Ohio, and one of the original provisions in my tort reform bill was a fee-shifting provision like they have in the UK, loser pays. And of course, the irony of that was the biggest pushback I got was from the people who probably were the deeper pockets who said, hey, we've got assets. When we lose, we're going to pay. And these other guys, they're pretty much judgment proof in a lot of cases. So while we've talked about it, it's not in this draft. Neither is anything on increasing damages. But I will tell you, I have no pride of authorship in the current draft that we have, and am every day thinking about and working on how do we actually make this better for property owners, intellectual property patent holders. So if, I'd love to sit down and talk to you about that idea some more. It's not that it wasn't discussed, it just didn't make the draft. And the same thing with increasing damages, we talked about it and just don't have it in there today, but it doesn't mean that those kind of ideas or other ideas aren't worth discussing. So if anybody wants to call my office, and Nick Bush is here in the back somewhere, he's my legislative director. Our number is 202-225-2015 and ask for Nick or me, and we'll call you back and would love to chat with you about this. Frankly, I've never been granted a patent. I'm not an expert on patents. I believe in intellectual property. I want to make our intellectual property system work better, but I'm not an expert, and many of you in this room are, so please call us and talk to us. You know, this is my job, is to do this and do it right. And the only way I can do it is if I'm meeting with people that know and have information on the system. So please call us. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.